Your doctor probably told you to take calcium supplements for your bones, but the 2026 food pyramid just confirmed the terrifying truth cardiologists have been whispering for years. Supplemental calcium without this forgotten vitamin is calcifying your arteries like concrete, setting you up for a massive heart attack. The fear of osteoporosis has driven millions to pop calcium pills religiously. Yet fracture rates haven't decreased, they've increased, while simultaneously, cardiovascular disease has exploded in the calcium supplementing population. What finally got exposed is the existence of a vitamin that functions like a molecular traffic director, actively pulling rogue calcium out of your arterial walls where it forms deadly plaques, and depositing it into your bones where you desperately need it. This isn't magnesium, though that helps. This is vitamin K2, the most critical and criminally overlooked nutrient in the new guidelines, and almost nobody is getting enough from modern diets. Before we begin, this information is for educational purposes and doesn't replace medical consultation. If you take blood-thinning medications like warfarin, vitamin K intake must be carefully monitored and discussed with your physician, as K2 affects coagulation pathways. Always consult your healthcare provider before adding high K2 foods or supplements, especially with cardiovascular conditions or medications. The content is based on 2026 dietary guidelines and current research, but individual medical situations require personalized professional guidance. Now, let me ask you something that might change the way you think about every calcium pill you have ever swallowed. If you've been taking calcium supplements for 5 years, 10 years, maybe longer, have you ever once been told where that calcium actually ends up once it enters your bloodstream? Because here is the uncomfortable reality that millions of people over 60 are living right now without knowing it. Most of that supplemental calcium is not going to your bones. It is depositing itself into the walls of your arteries, into the valves of your heart, into your kidneys, into your joints, and into soft tissues throughout your body, where it has absolutely no business being. And the reason it ends up in all those wrong places, instead of strengthening your skeleton, is shockingly simple. You are missing the one vitamin that tells calcium where to go. Think about it this way. Imagine you order a truckload of bricks to build a new wall in your house. The truck shows up, dumps all the bricks in your driveway, and leaves. No bricklayer, no foreman, no blueprint. Those bricks will sit there, get in the way, cause damage. They will end up everywhere except inside the wall you needed built. That is exactly what happens when you take calcium without vitamin K2. The calcium enters your bloodstream like bricks dumped in a driveway. And without K2 acting as the master foreman directing placement, physics and chemistry take over. Calcium precipitates wherever conditions favor it, and unfortunately, damaged arterial walls, inflamed joint tissue, and weakened heart valves are prime deposition sites. Your bones, ironically, get shortchanged because there is no active transport mechanism pulling calcium into the bone matrix without K2's involvement. This is not a fringe theory. This is the calcium paradox, a phenomenon that has haunted researchers for over 2 decades, and that the 2026 food pyramid finally acknowledges head-on. The calcium paradox describes an almost unbelievable clinical observation. Populations with the highest calcium intake in the world have simultaneously the highest rates of osteoporosis and cardiovascular disease. Weak bones and rock-hard arteries in the same person. How can someone have too little calcium in their bones and too much calcium in their arteries at the same time? The answer is K2, or rather, the catastrophic absence of K2. Vitamin K2 activates 2 critical proteins in your body. And these 2 proteins are the entire reason K2 matters so profoundly for anyone over 60. The first is called osteocalcin. Your bone-building cells produce osteocalcin constantly, but they produce it in an inactive form. Inactive osteocalcin cannot bind calcium. It cannot pull calcium from your bloodstream and deposit it into the mineral matrix that gives bones their hardness. It just floats around uselessly while calcium drifts past in the blood, looking for somewhere else to settle. Vitamin K2 is the activator. Through a biochemical process called carboxylation, K2 transforms osteocalcin from an idle bystander into a powerful calcium magnet. Activated osteocalcin grabs calcium ions from your blood and physically escorts them to the bone surface where they are incorporated into the crystal structure. Without K2, carboxylation does not happen. Osteocalcin stays inactive. Calcium stays in the blood. Bones stay weak. The second protein is called matrix GLA protein, or MGP. If osteocalcin is the foreman directing calcium into bones, MGP is the security guard preventing calcium from entering places it should never be. MGP is produced in the smooth muscle cells of your arterial walls, in cartilage, and in heart valve tissue. Its single biological mission is to inhibit calcification of soft tissue. MGP binds to calcium crystals forming in arterial walls and dissolves them before they grow into the rock-hard plaques that narrow your arteries and set the stage for heart attacks. But just like osteocalcin, MGP requires vitamin K2 to be switched on. Without K2, inactive MGP accumulates in your arterial walls, completely powerless to stop calcium from depositing. When this happens, your arteries calcify. The smooth, elastic walls that should expand and contract with every heartbeat become stiff and rigid, encrusted with mineral deposits like limestone forming in a pipe. Blood pressure rises because stiff arteries cannot absorb the pressure wave from each heartbeat. The calcified plaques narrow the arterial opening, reducing blood flow to critical organs. And if a plaque ruptures, it triggers a blood clot that can block an artery completely, causing a heart attack if it happens in the coronary arteries, or a stroke if it happens in the arteries supplying your brain. If you are over 60 and have been taking calcium supplements for years without K2, there is a significant statistical probability that your arteries have already begun calcifying. You might not feel it yet. Arterial calcification is silent in the early and middle stages. It does not cause pain. It progresses invisibly for years until one day it causes a catastrophic event. You might notice that you get breathless more easily during physical exertion, that walking uphill leaves you winded in a way it didn't 5 years ago. You might feel a tightness in your chest during exercise that goes away when you rest. These are warning signs of angina, inadequate blood supply to the heart, caused by calcified, narrowed coronary arteries. Calcification of the aorta, the main artery carrying blood from your heart to your entire body, stiffens the vessel wall and increases systolic blood pressure. This is why isolated systolic hypertension, high systolic with normal diastolic pressure, is so common in older adults. It is not a mysterious consequence of aging. It is a direct mechanical result of aortic calcification. Calcification of the heart valves makes those delicate flaps stiff and unable to open or close properly. Aortic valve calcification is now the most common cause of heart valve replacement surgery in developed countries. Here is where this gets truly alarming for anyone over 60 who has been following conventional medical advice. For decades, doctors have been prescribing 3 things to aging patients with the best of intentions: calcium supplements for osteoporosis prevention, vitamin D supplements to increase calcium absorption, and cholesterol-lowering statins for cardiovascular protection. Each of these prescriptions, taken individually, seems to make sense. But taken together without K2, they create a biochemical perfect storm that accelerates the exact conditions they are supposed to prevent. Start with calcium supplements. You take 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams daily, as recommended. That calcium enters your bloodstream and raises serum calcium levels. But without K2 to activate osteocalcin and pull that calcium into bones, much of it remains in circulation. It's a reservoir of mineral looking for a place to deposit. Now add vitamin D3. Your doctor told you to take D3 because it increases calcium absorption from the intestines, which is true. D3 activates proteins in your gut lining that dramatically increase how much calcium enters your bloodstream. So now you have even more calcium flooding your circulation because D3 is doing exactly what it is supposed to do. But without K2, there is no activated osteocalcin pulling that calcium into bones. There is no activated MGP protecting your arteries from calcification. You have massively increased the supply of calcium without activating the guidance system that determines where it goes. The result is predictable and devastating. Arterial calcification accelerates while bones continue to weaken. Large-scale clinical studies confirm this with disturbing consistency. A landmark analysis published in the British Medical Journal found that calcium supplementation without K2 increased the risk of heart attack by 30%. A meta-analysis of 15 randomized controlled trials involving over 20,000 participants found that calcium supplements increased cardiovascular events by 25 to 30%. The evidence was so striking that some cardiologists began calling calcium supplements the silent killer hiding in your medicine cabinet. Meanwhile, studies on vitamin K2 tell the opposite story. The Rotterdam study, one of Europe's largest cardiovascular studies, followed nearly 5,000 older adults for over a decade. Individuals with the highest K2 intake had 52% less arterial calcification. A Japanese study tracking postmenopausal women found that those supplementing with both vitamin D3 and K2 together experienced an 81% reduction in fracture risk. The combination was so dramatically more effective that researchers concluded it should be considered irresponsible to prescribe D3 without ensuring adequate K2 status. Yet, that is exactly what millions of prescriptions worldwide do every single day. Drop a comment telling me, are you currently taking calcium supplements? Did your doctor mention vitamin K2? Most haven't heard of it. What country are you watching from? Share this potentially life-saving information with family members at risk of heart disease. Send it to your health-conscious friends. Now let me explain the two forms of K2 because this distinction matters for practical application. MK4 is found in animal fats from grass-fed animals. When a cow eats grass, bacteria in its digestive system convert vitamin K1 into K2 in the MK4 form. This is deposited into the animal's fat, milk, organs, and egg yolks. This is why grass-fed butter is golden yellow, while grain-fed butter is pale white. MK4 has a short half-life of about 4 to 6 hours, meaning you need regular intake throughout the day. MK7 is produced by bacterial fermentation. The richest source is natto, a traditional Japanese fermented soybean food. It contains over 1,100 micrograms of MK7 per 100-gram serving, many times more than any other food. Aged hard cheeses like Gouda, Brie, and Edam also contain meaningful MK7 from their bacterial cultures. MK7 has a much longer half-life of approximately 3 days, accumulating in tissues and providing sustained activity. Most clinical studies showing cardiovascular benefits used MK7. Here is the critical context explaining why virtually everyone eating a modern Western diet is K2 deficient. 4 converging factors have systematically eliminated K2 from the food supply over the past century. First, the shift from grass-fed to grain-fed livestock. When cattle, chickens, and other animals are confined in feedlots and fed corn, soy, and grain instead of grass and forage, the bacterial conversion of K1 to K2 in their digestive systems plummets. The fat, milk, eggs, and organs from grain-fed animals contain dramatically less K2 than their grass-fed counterparts. A study comparing grass-fed butter to conventional butter found 3 to 4 times more K2 in the grass-fed version. The same disparity exists in egg yolks. Eggs from pastured hens that eat insects and grass contain significantly more K2. If you buy the cheapest eggs and butter at the supermarket, you are getting a fraction of the K2 that your grandparents got. Second, the disappearance of organ meats from modern diets. Liver, kidney, and heart are among the richest sources of K2 in the MK4 form. Your grandparents ate liver regularly. Modern Western diets have abandoned organ meats almost entirely. Most people under 50 have never eaten liver in their lives. This single dietary shift eliminated one of the most concentrated K2 sources. Third, the push toward low-fat dairy promoted aggressively by the old food pyramid. K2 is a fat-soluble vitamin. It lives in fat. When you skim the cream off the milk, when you eat fat-free yogurt, when you choose low-fat cheese, you are choosing products stripped of their K2 content. The old dietary guidelines that demonized fat and championed low-fat dairy effectively engineered K2 deficiency into the population. Fourth, the abandonment of fermented foods. Traditional diets worldwide included sauerkraut, kimchi, natto, aged cheeses, and fermented sauces. These provided MK7 produced by bacterial cultures. Modern diets replace these with processed, pasteurized, shelf-stable alternatives. These contain no living bacteria and no bacterially produced K2. The convergence of these factors means the average modern person consumes a fraction of the K2 humans consumed for thousands of years. And the devastating irony, at the same time K2 disappeared from the diet, calcium and vitamin D supplementation exploded. The medical establishment poured calcium and D into aging populations, while the one vitamin that directs calcium metabolism correctly vanished. Let me tell you about a medical test that brings this into sharp, practical focus. A coronary artery calcium scan, or CAC scan, uses low-dose CT imaging to directly visualize and quantify calcium deposited in your coronary arteries. The result is an Agatston score. 0 means no detectable calcium, excellent. 1 to 100 means mild calcification. 100 to 400 means moderate calcification and significantly increased risk. Above 400 means severe calcification and high risk of cardiac events. The CAC scan is far more predictive of heart attack risk than cholesterol numbers or blood pressure readings. A person with high cholesterol and a 0 CAC score has very low heart attack risk. A person with normal cholesterol and a CAC score of 400 has very high risk. The calcium in the arteries is the danger, not the cholesterol in the blood. A study published in Thrombosis and Hemostasis followed patients with existing arterial calcification and gave half of them 180 micrograms of MK7 daily. The other half received placebo. After 3 years, the placebo group showed continued progression. The K2 group showed significantly less progression, and in some patients, calcification scores actually decreased. Arterial calcification was reversing. The activated MGP, finally switched on by adequate K2, was doing what it was designed to do, binding to calcium deposits and removing them. Think about what that means. If you have been accumulating arterial calcium for years because you took calcium supplements without K2, because you avoided the very animal fats that deliver K2, because your doctor never mentioned this vitamin, the damage may not be permanent. Your body possesses an elegant built-in mechanism to decalcify arteries. That mechanism has been sitting dormant, inactive, switched off, because the single nutrient required to activate it has been absent from your diet. Every day that you start providing adequate K2, you are reactivating that mechanism. You are switching MGP back on. You are giving your body the tool it needs to begin cleaning calcium out of your arterial walls and redirecting it to your bones where it belongs. The body wants to heal. It knows how to heal. It just needs the right molecular instructions, and K2 is those instructions. If you're committed to protecting your heart and bones the right way with proper nutrient synergy, type in the comments, "I choose K2 for life." Hit that like button and subscribe, because upcoming videos will reveal the exact foods and combinations that reverse arterial calcification and rebuild bone density simultaneously. Now, let me give you practical, concrete steps you can take starting this week. The goal is to dramatically increase K2 intake through food first, and through targeted supplementation if necessary. Aged hard cheese is the most accessible daily source of MK7. Gouda, particularly aged Gouda, contains approximately 75 micrograms of K2 per ounce, roughly the size of 4 dice. You can eat this daily as a snack, grated over salads, or melted into scrambled eggs. The key word is aged. Fresh, soft cheeses have not undergone enough fermentation to produce significant K2. Always choose full-fat versions because K2 is concentrated in the fat fraction. Egg yolks from pasture-raised hens provide meaningful daily K2 alongside a wealth of other critical nutrients. 2 to 3 whole eggs daily from hens that lived outdoors and 8 insects and grass deliver K2, vitamin D3, choline for brain health, and high-quality protein. The yolk is where the K2 resides, along with virtually every other nutrient in the egg. Eating only egg whites, as the old pyramid encouraged, is nutritionally absurd. You throw away the most nutritious part. The 2026 guidelines explicitly encourage whole egg consumption for older adults, recognizing eggs as one of the most nutrient-dense, affordable, and accessible protein sources available. Grass-fed butter delivers K2, vitamin A, vitamin D, and conjugated linoleic acid in every tablespoon. Use it for cooking, spread it on vegetables, melt it over sweet potatoes. The deep yellow color tells you it is rich in fat-soluble nutrients. Pale white butter from grain-fed cows contains far less. Liver from any animal, particularly chicken liver, is extraordinarily rich in MK4. A single 3-ounce serving provides more K2 than most people get in an entire week. If you dislike the taste, try chicken liver pâté blended with herbs and butter. Eating liver just once a week can meaningfully shift your K2 status. Natto, if you are willing to explore it, is in a class by itself. This traditional Japanese food made from soybeans fermented with Bacillus subtilis bacteria contains more K2 per serving than any other food on the planet. A 50-gram serving provides over 500 micrograms of MK7, a therapeutic dose from a single food. The taste and texture are unusual, sticky, stringy, with a strong fermented flavor that many Westerners find challenging at first. But if you can acquire the taste, natto is the single most powerful K2 food you can eat. Find it frozen in Asian grocery stores and increasingly in health food stores. Try it mixed with rice, soy sauce, and mustard, the traditional Japanese preparation. Fermented vegetables like raw sauerkraut, not the pasteurized kind in cans, but the truly fermented kind sold in the refrigerated section, provide smaller but meaningful amounts of MK7, along with probiotics that support gut health. Kimchi is another excellent option. If you cannot consistently eat enough K2-rich foods, supplementation with MK7 at 90 to 200 micrograms daily is reasonable. Always take K2 with a meal containing fat because it is fat-soluble and requires dietary fat for absorption. Taking K2 on an empty stomach dramatically reduces absorption. A critically important warning: if you take warfarin or any vitamin K-dependent anticoagulant, you must talk to your doctor before increasing K2 intake. Warfarin works by blocking the vitamin K cycle, and increasing K2 can reduce the drug's anticoagulant effect. Some physicians now prescribe stable daily K2 alongside adjusted warfarin doses, which actually makes anticoagulation more predictable. But this absolutely must be done under medical supervision with regular INR monitoring. If you take newer anticoagulants like rivaroxaban, apixaban, or dabigatran, these do not interact with vitamin K, and you can increase K2 intake freely. However, always inform your prescribing physician about significant dietary changes. The K2 story is a perfect microcosm of everything the 2026 food pyramid is trying to correct. The old approach isolated individual nutrients, supplemented them in isolation, and ignored the complex web of interactions that determine real-world effects. Calcium was studied without K2. Vitamin D was prescribed without K2. Fat was demonized without understanding that fat-soluble vitamins require dietary fat for absorption and are concentrated in the very animal fats that were vilified. The new approach recognizes that nutrients function in interdependent networks. An ounce of aged Gouda is not the same as a calcium pill plus a K2 capsule plus a vitamin A supplement, even if the milligrams match on paper. The whole food provides synergy and bioavailability that isolated supplements cannot replicate. This connects directly to the 2026 guidelines rehabilitation of dietary fat, specifically saturated fat from whole, unprocessed animal sources. For 4 decades, you were told that saturated fat clogs arteries and causes heart disease. You were told to switch from butter to margarine, from whole milk to skim, from eggs to egg whites. Almost every element of that advice has been disproven or heavily qualified by subsequent research. Saturated fat from whole food sources like grass-fed butter, aged cheese, and egg yolks is not only innocent of the charges laid against it, it is the primary delivery vehicle for vitamin K2. When you removed saturated fat from your diet on your doctor's advice, you simultaneously removed K2. When you switched from whole milk to skim, you removed the K2. When you threw away the egg yolk and ate only the white, you threw away the K2. When you replaced butter with margarine, you replaced a K2-rich food with a K2-devoid industrial product. The low-fat dietary revolution was not just nutritionally misguided on fat. It inadvertently created an epidemic of K2 deficiency. That has contributed directly to the explosion of cardiovascular calcification and osteoporosis in Western populations. Your grandmother ate grass-fed butter without guilt. She ate eggs from hens that scratched in the dirt. She ate organ meats because nothing was wasted. She ate aged cheeses and fermented vegetables because that was how food was preserved before refrigeration. She cooked with lard and tallow, not seed oils. And here is the thing. She got K2 naturally, abundantly, daily, without ever knowing the name of the vitamin, without ever reading a study, without ever taking a supplement. Her bones were dense. Her arteries were clean. The calcium paradox did not exist because the diet provided all the necessary cofactors in their natural proportions. Then modern nutrition science came along and told everyone that the way she ate was wrong. Avoid the fat. Avoid the cholesterol. Drink skim milk. Eat margarine. Replace real food with engineered products designed in laboratories. And they supplemented with calcium and vitamin D to compensate for the nutrients removed by these dietary changes. Not realizing the very changes they recommended eliminated the K2 that made calcium metabolism work correctly in the first place. The result is the calcium paradox, a disease of modernity, a disease of good intentions and bad science, a disease that is entirely preventable and largely reversible once you understand the mechanism. You deserve to know this. You deserve to have this information so you can make informed decisions about your bones, your heart, your medications, and your diet. The 2026 Food Pyramid gives you the scientific foundation. The food choices are accessible, affordable, and practical. aged cheese, pastured eggs, grass-fed butter, liver once a week, fermented foods when you can. These are not exotic superfoods requiring special orders and premium prices. These are ancestral foods that sustained human health for millennia, and that modern guidelines finally acknowledge again after 4 decades of catastrophic error. Your arteries deserve to be clean and elastic. Your bones deserve to be dense and strong. Your heart deserves to beat in a body that provides the right nutrients in the right combinations. Do not accept the calcium paradox as inevitable. It is not age. It is not genetics. It is a nutritional deficiency with a clear, evidence-based solution. If this information changed how you think about calcium, bones, and heart health, hit that like button right now. That single action tells the algorithm to push this video to more people over 60 who are unknowingly putting themselves at risk every day. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a video that could change your health trajectory. And please, share this with someone you love who takes calcium pills. Send it to your spouse, your parent, your friend who complains about stiff joints and high blood pressure while popping calcium tablets every morning. They deserve to know about K2. Knowledge that stays hidden cannot save anyone. I will see you in the next video. Take care of yourself.